Welcome to the With You and For You podcast. Our desire is to equip college-age students within the Edmond, OKC area by discussing topics and questions that are relevant to our generation. With that in mind, let's get to the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the With You and For You podcast. It is Riley Jackson, your host, as always, along with my three friends, Krista Dye, Tyson Hill, and Kyle Thomas. It's good to see you guys.
It's good seeing you, bro.
Yeah, we didn't record last week. It was a pretty busy week, but yeah, it's good to be back.
Hundreds of grilled cheeses and pancakes.
Made a lot. Made a lot of food.
It was a lot.
Those pancakes were good too.
And tacos.
Yeah,
They were good.
It was really good. You guys did awesome. Put so much peanut butter on them. It's great.
Mm.
I'm more of a French toast guy.
Really?
I like waffles. I like French toast too, but I like waffles
French toast
more.
is just so
Maybe
good.
we should do French toast one day.
That's
A lot of work.
a lot of work.
It's
It's doable. I mean, probably just about as much work as the grilled cheeses.
like on a Thursday
true.
night, because I don't
Is
feel like
grilled
as many
cheese
people come
plural
back.
already? Because as I say grilled
Yeah.
cheeses, I'm like, it sounds
grilled
like I should
cheese.
just say grilled cheese.
Hey, we're gonna have grilled cheese tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that.
French toast. You make that with like eggs, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd go through a lot of eggs.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
okay. Eggs
Yeah.
are cheap.
That's true.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah, that was good.
Comment down below if you want
let us know.
French toast night.
You prefer French toast or pancakes?
Yeah. So today we're talking about pride and humility, just kind of jumping right into it. So we're going to be talking about those two and how they're kind of the flip side of each other. And kind of to be honest with you, this is going to be a lot of information. So if we need to do a part 2 on this, we definitely can. But first of all, like, I want to just kind of ask you guys, what is pride and why do we have it? What? What's so funny?
I literally asked
It
before
was
we started.
reworded on
I
his
was like,
chest.
"Hey, bro, are you just gonna like have us define what these words are?" And he's like,
said,
"No, I've got it covered."
You just reworded the question a little bit instead of just being like define pride. You just
Oh, really?
Riley, why don't you define it for us?
Pride?
What is pride and why do we have it?
Why are you so feisty?
I like it. I like it.
You know what? Why don't you?
Krista woke up today and she chose violence. Come at me one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Riley, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I don't know like the exact definition of it, but what I've seen from like myself before is that like pride is whenever you are thinking of yourself before others, and boasting up yourself in things that you shouldn't and you don't have the right to. And that's what I truly believe pride is. I mean, it's thinking of yourself first in all situations. And the reason that we have it is just because we're born with it. And Paul tells us in Romans, for we have all fallen short of the glory of God. And I mean, as soon as we're born, that's something that we inherently do. So that's what I kind of believe pride is, and why we have it is because we're born with it. So,
Yeah.
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 Does that answer
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Yeah, that was good.
That was good.
Yeah.
I think it was good.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, what makes this so dangerous? What makes having pride so dangerous within this Christian walk, or maybe not even a Christian walk, just in life? What is so dangerous about pride?
I mean, I think oftentimes when we talk about pride, some of us can argue, reason with ourselves, like, "Oh, I'm not prideful. I don't think about myself, all the time, or I'm not building myself up. Like I spend more time, maybe tearing myself down." But as you mentioned, like pride is this idea of like, hey, I'm thinking of myself first, right? Like I'm looking out for me, and maybe even like I'm serving others for my benefit. I'm doing these things so that I'm acknowledged, or I want people to notice me. Or you think of, I remember, I would do this sometimes, and this was, sin, obviously, and so it had to be things that were confessed, but it'd be like having this thought of like, well, why am I not up there on that stage? Like, I have something that I could give. Like, why have I not been asked to speak? Or why am I not given the opportunity? Or, we start to list off these things, and it's like, well, hey, hey, Kyle, God doesn't have that for you. So, you're not there for that specific reason that you're having these thoughts, right? Proverbs is honestly, I highly recommend just reading through Proverbs for a lot of, wisdom, period, but also, pride or any of these things. Proverbs touched on these things, but 11:2 says, when pride comes, then comes dishonor. And so we see, okay, hey, like any pride, even if it's a little bit, if it's a little thought of me first, or hey, I'm awesome, hey, I'm great, hey, I'm this, like dishonor follows. And so we have to be intentional in recognizing that, because it can become something that we can appear to be humble, we can appear to be servant-hearted, when really we're just prideful.
I'd say why pride can also be really dangerous is because it clouds what our relationship with the Lord should look like, in the sense of like just regarding him as holy and above all and as majesty, and just not putting ourselves in those places. And in Isaiah 2, it talks about like the coming day of the Lord. And it says in 17, it says, and the haughtiness of man shall be humbled, and the lofty pride of men shall be brought low, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day. And then just, reading on in it, it just talks about how when the Lord comes, like our pride and everything that we quote unquote have built for ourselves will all fall away and will all pass away. And instead, like as Christians, we should be looking to be humbled by the Lord in our relationship with him, so that we can see that he is all and he is above all, and we have no place in that. So again, it can just be dangerous because it can cloud what our relationship with the Lord should actually be looking like.
So kind of with our next question, well, actually, Kyle, do you want me to answer this too about defining what humility is and how we have that?
I'm not saying anything's wrong with it. I just was asking if that's what you were going to do.
I don't know. Do you want me to? I can.
Well, if you want to.
I think
don't
you
know.
should, Riley.
You think I
I'll
should?
let you.
Okay.
I'll let you answer it.
Like,
Not that I'm in charge.
Okay. So humility is the opposite of pride. Humility is not thinking of yourself less. It's thinking of it's thinking of your
Not thinking less of yourself.
less of yourself. It's not thinking less of yourself.
It's not thinking of yourself less. It's thinking less of yourself. You got to tear yourself down in order to be humble. I don't want you to be encouraged at all.
It's thinking of your oh my gosh.
Thinking of yourself
It's thinking
less.
of yourself less.
not thinking less of
There we go.
Do you need a
Golly,
break?
I can't.
Somebody write it
I
down
am-
for him, please.
It's so difficult.
Yeah.
We got the point.
You got the
But,
point.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And humility looks like that, and we see that epitomized within Jesus, like what he was, who he was, and who he is. So that is truly what humility is, and how we have that is by following Jesus and pursuing him every single day. Because if we neglect that and don't do that, then pride is just going to flow from us, because that is our natural inclination. Like we said before, our flesh naturally wants to do that.
Yeah.
But if we follow Jesus, that is how we have humility. So that's the kind of the definition of humility and what that means. But what does it kind of look like for us to do our best and not fall into the trap of getting prideful and doing things for ourselves?
I think it starts with us understanding like what true humility is. I think Kyle touched on this, but so often we, in order to run from pride, start to get in this place of like self-pity or self-deprecation where we really like put ourselves down at the expense of like seeming prideful. And so that's not humility. Like to just look at the negative and how horrible we are, like that's not true humility. Like true humility is somewhere in between being prideful and being self-deprecating. It's like understanding like, okay, I've come a long way, but I still have a long way to go. And so like understanding that yes, the Lord has done good things in me. So not neglecting that side, because when we look and overly beat ourselves up for our sinful nature and for in sports not making the catch or whatever, that's a bad analogy. Anyways,
I feel it.
like when we beat ourselves up so much, we forget like the joy that is the redemption of Jesus in our lives. And then whenever we think that we're the ones who are good and we're the ones who did it all, then we push ourselves above Jesus again. And so like understanding that humility is in the middle, understanding that like, okay, like, yeah, I'm a sinful human, but I've been redeemed by Jesus and I still have a lot more to learn. I think like understanding that like pride in an essence is the like lazy way out of conviction. That whenever we feel prideful and we're just like, yes, I'm good enough, I don't have a problem, then we're just like, okay, Lord, I'm just not going to listen to you because I'm good enough.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus is obviously the perfect example because Jesus was never, he never wavered in his confidence. Like he knew who he was, he knew whose he was, like he knew why he was on earth, like what his goal was, his ministry, his purpose, and that's why you see people when he teaches, like they're like, oh, he's speaking with this authority that we've never experienced. It's like because he was very confident in what he was saying, why he was there, in his message. And so a lot of times we think in order to be humble, we cannot be confident. And so we tear ourselves down, right? I know for me, like just being athletic, okay? God has created all of us the way he has for a purpose, okay? That doesn't mean that we're all supposed to be athletic. That doesn't mean that we're all supposed to be, necessarily musical. Like, I mean, there are things that you can learn and put in and you can practice and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just saying, like, for me to be athletic and people ask me questions on it and then me just be like, nah, man, like, whatever, like, I'm not, it's like, okay, yeah, I don't want to fall into pride and arrogance, but it's also, all right, I also don't want to be lying like about something towards like if somebody says, oh man, hey, like that was really cool, like that was a good catch or whatever. It's like, oh hey, thanks, like I appreciate that. Like, or when people ask, I don't know, for some reason people ask me like, hey, God, how are you so fast? I'm like, I don't know, the Lord, like, and that's kind of the truth. It's not like I just woke up one day and was like, you know what, I want to be really, really fast one day. And so it's understanding this line of, hey, I can be confident in who God has made me and where God has me, but that confidence is acknowledging Him and who He is in my life, not acknowledging my accomplishments and what I have done or what I am doing for my gain and my benefit, right? So I think we have to find that in ourselves, like, and in our relationship with the Lord, and understand, okay, God, like, who have you made me to be? Who have you created me to be? What is my purpose? And how have you gifted me to accomplish your purpose through me? And so if that's athletics, all right, how can I use these things for your glory? If it's music, how can I use this for your glory? If it's, cars, whatever it could be, how can I use these things to glorify you and to fulfill the Great Commission? And in that, I can be humble and acknowledge, kind of as Tyson said, like, hey, the only reason I'm able to do these things is because of the Lord. And because of that, I want to give all the glory to Him. And the best way I can do that is by using these things that He's gifted me in for His glory. And really walking in that, because the rest of verse 2, chapter 11 of Proverbs says, but with the humble is wisdom. And so we see if we're living in humility, like there is wisdom there. Wisdom follows us living in humility. and we will be able to discern and understand proper decisions, right decisions, things that don't lead to selfishness and pride and everything. But it doesn't start with us just tearing ourselves down, as we kind of mentioned, or thinking less of ourselves. Because then it's kind of like, oh, hey, like you're just a liar, right? It's like, so if somebody's asking you a genuine question and you're gifted in it, you don't have to tear yourself down to appear humble. That's not what God wants. That's disobedience. He doesn't desire that. He wants you to acknowledge these things that he's gifted you in for his glory, right? It'd be like Abraham, you know, if he's wondering, like, hey, you know, God called me to this land or whatever. And Abraham's like, oh no, guys, like I'm just walking around, you know, like I don't really know where I'm going. I'm just, you know, on a stroll for ever, right? It's like, no, like, hey, this is what God's called me to, and I'm just being obedient and following him. So we have to be really intentional in that.
Yeah. So you mentioned, both of you guys kind of mentioned like being gifted at things, and there's things that we just have to accept and that we're like the Lord has gifted us with. Then there's things we have to work at and have to pursue to be good at. I've heard this term all my life, and I've even heard it from like leaders within the church of like, okay, we have to take pride in what we do here. We have to take pride in our craft. We have to take pride in our work ethic. Is that like a saying that we should like fall under? Should we go by those things, or is that just a word that's kind of been thrown around too much to where it's like we probably should replace that? Like you should really care for it and work hard for these things. What do you guys think about that?
What are things that make you proud? Not prideful, but like what are things that make you like proud? Think about it. What are some things? It's an all skate. So guys, don't just stare at me.
A good OU win.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. No, I just meant for the last 2 weeks. Anyway, okay. So you think of a team, your team winning. Maybe not even your team winning. Maybe your team just performing well, right? Or maybe your performance, right? It's like, hey, like I'm proud of that. Or maybe it's somebody you care about. Okay, maybe you think spiritually. Maybe it's somebody that you've been investing in, you've been discipling, and you see them faithfully walking with the Lord, right? Like they come in and like, hey, I'm going on mission, or I'm going to do this, and they've taken this initiative upon themselves, like to do that, right? You're like, I'm so proud of you, right? So I think there is kind of these different things, because we've touched on it a little bit, but you think of doing things in excellence, right? Hey, I want to be proud in the thing I do, not to acknowledge myself, but to give glory to God. And so that's why, as a believer, if I'm a student, I need to work hard. I need to work hard in my homework. I need to work hard in my studying. I need to be attentive in class. Like, and I'm not saying I wasn't a great student either. Like, I mean, I was able to be lazy and still do all right, but that's not justification for my laziness. And so there definitely are some opportunities where it's like, what am I communicating to them if I say I'm a believer, yet I'm not showing up to class consistently, or I'm not prepared? I'm always going up to them and saying, hey, can I get an extension on this assignment? Hey, can I get an extension? It's like, who am I showing them that I, as a follower of Jesus, like, what am I saying? Right? So I think when I hear the phrase like, hey, you need to take pride in your work, it's not necessarily so much of, hey, I want to do this so people acknowledge me, which is a worldly standard. You need to take pride in your work because then people will see it and they'll glorify you or whatever. They'll acknowledge you. Man, that was awesome. Like, you did such a great job. That was such a great performance. Hey, way to perform out there on the field. Hey, your graphic design, your art, it's amazing. It's awesome. You know, acknowledging those things. But more so, hey, I am doing this not for other people. I'm doing this for the Lord. I can't remember who it was, but there's a story about kind of this architect or designer working on this cathedral, and he's up in this tiny corner of the ceiling where nobody's really going to see, and he's doing very precise detail work, and somebody walks in, it's like, what are you doing? Like, nobody's going to know what that looks like from where I'm at. Like, we can't even see. And the response is, well, God will. Like, God will know. And so the things that we are a part of, we really need to be able to commit ourselves to. And I understand being a student, schoolwork can be awful. I get it. And I completely agree. Hey, you know what? God may have more things for you than just getting A's. But that doesn't justify laziness. So you have to really discern, okay, am I just being lazy? Or, hey, do I need to be doing these things a little bit better for the sake of excellence? And the same thing is like, hey, in my job or my interactions with other classmates, with my peers, the relationships I'm building, friendships, am I pursuing those things? And is it something like I need to take pride like in these for God's glory, not for my own? Because if it was up to me, like, as I mentioned, I'm lazy. Like, if it was like, oh, yeah, I'm doing this for me, then people would see through it in a heartbeat. Ah, Kyle's pretty selfish. Like, Kyle doesn't really care about me. Like, he's just talking to me because he wants to use my story for this purpose or whatever. You know, it's like they can pick those things out, but even if they don't pick those things out, they will be revealed at some point, and people will realize, oh, yeah, Kyle was a real jerk. You know, like, so we have to be pretty mindful of that. But I don't think it's a phrase we have to, like, walk away from as long as we use it in the proper context.
Yeah, I think the Lord loves a cheerful giver. And so everything that we do should be a gift to God. And so, like, I think that the expression may be taken as a misnomer, and, like, there may be some miscommunications there. But the idea of, like, being proud of what we've done for the Lord, like, there's no sinfulness in that. It's whenever we are like, I did it. But then every time I feel that way, honestly, I, like, Lord reminds, like, no. And I'm like, you're right. I did not do this. And even all the things I'm gifted in whenever, and, like, personally, like, it's okay. Like, people say, you do this good and you do this good. And I'm able to say, thank you. I appreciate that. But, like, honestly, I'm not naturally gifted at anything. The gift that the Lord gave me is that I'm just really good at preparing. I mean, don't look at my college grades, obviously.
No, Tyson, you're a smooth talker. If you didn't believe in Jesus, you'd manipulate so many people. Don't even lie, bro.
Well, not because of my degree, but, like, I am good at preparing, and so, like, that's the gift the Lord has given me, and I've seen the fruit in other places because of it, and, you know, you gain knowledge, but, like, I like to do things for the Lord, and I see the importance of preparation, and the Lord shows me the excellence that he can perform through that. And so, like, all of it is saturated with him. And so as long as it's focused on him, like, the gift is focused on him, the outcome is focused on him, then, like, that's true humility, is being able to, at the end of the day, when someone says, man, that's an awesome person, I can say, yes, because of God.
Yeah.
I think it also goes back to remembering, like, even in, like, whatever gifts you have or whatever, always remembering that you may be gifted in that, but, like, you have to rely upon the Lord's strength to continue to do what he calls you to do. Even, like, if you have the gift of, like, evangelism, and that just comes naturally to you, you going out and evangelizing, like, leaving there and being like, yeah, I just shared the gospel with that person, like, I said this and it, like, went really great, or, like, whatever, can cause you to start being prideful. But if before that gospel appointment you're like, Lord, like, give me strength to share your truth and share it in love, and none of this can come out of my own strength but your own strength, and just recognizing that and remembering, like you guys have already said, that everything comes from God, for God, and for his glory and his glory alone. And I think that also helps just in understanding the difference between pride and humility, is understanding that you are not doing anything for your own glory or your own gain, but that it all goes back to God's glory. And everything he is doing from Genesis to Revelation is all for the purpose of him gaining glory. And there's a quote from a book that I really like called Humility by Andrew Murray. And it was written kind of a long time ago, so it's kind of, like, hard to read. But it says, the highest glory of the creature, meaning man, is in being only a vessel to receive and enjoy and show forth the glory of God. It can do this only as it is willing to be nothing in itself that God may be all. And I love that quote because, and especially that in just how he talks about being a vessel, and he's saying, hey, like as a Christian, I should be willing to be nothing so that God can be all in everything that I say and everything that I do, because I recognize that everything comes from him. So I give it all back to him, and my gifts and my time and my talents and my treasures and whatever, like it is all for the glory of the Lord. So I can be proud in these things, but be proud in the things that God is doing in and through me for the sake of his glory being known, because my heart set is for God's glory to be made known. And so when I'm doing things that are pointing back to God's glory, those are things that I can be proud about.
Yeah. And I think kind of going off of that, like there's, just to be completely practical about it. Golly, words
wanna
are
go
hard.
You just said practical 3 times in a row.
Really? I
Yeah.
thought I said practicable. Like,
No,
would
you
that
said
be-
practical.
Really? Okay.
Every time.
Oh,
It's okay.
wow.
We still love you.
I'm getting there. To be really practical about it. That's 4 times. Gosh dang. If there's like an awesome moment that you experience or the Lord uses you in your life, and you start thinking like, oh, I just did that. Like, oh yeah, I just did that. It's okay. Like that is a normal thing for a human to go through. But what we have to do is we have to start reshaping our minds to whenever those things do happen, like that was an awesome moment. That was really cool. Like I just shared the gospel. Lord, thank you for being with me during this time to lead me and use me as a vessel in this. That's awesome. It was so fun. Thank you for that, Lord. And just reshaping our minds to start thinking in that way, in that manner, instead of thinking, oh, I just did that. Because I've been there so many times, and I still do that at times and at points. But it's the reshaping of your mind to take whatever is awesome and whatever is good and point it back to the Lord and thank him for it. Right after it happens. And that's honestly just the stepping stones in what we have to do to start overcoming pride.
Yeah. Well, it's something that's like, you think about as a believer, hey, what am I striving after?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We want to hear at the end, well done, my good and faithful servant. Like that's what we want to hear. Like that is a proper response, not, oh, hey, well done. You did a great job playing those sports. Or, hey, you know what? Well done. You did a good job rooting on your team. You know, it's like, no, you want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. And so in that, we have to acknowledge, okay, what does it look like to be just a faithful servant that is following? And part of it is being quick to confess the things that will get in the way of our walk with Jesus. And it is those, hey, these are awesome moments. These are great moments. We need to be quick to acknowledge those. We need to be quick to confess the things that are stumbling blocks, that are hitting us and putting us into this idea that we are bigger and better than ourselves. Because Isaiah 64 tells us, hey, even your righteous acts are like filthy rags, right? And it's not saying that to tear you down like, oh, I can't do anything good. Let me just sit in my room in a corner and mope. No, it's saying that just say, hey, like without God, I'm nothing. And that should be an encouragement to acknowledge, okay, hey, if I am nothing without God, but yet here God is sending his son to die for me so that I could have a relationship with him, like how much does he love me? And it shows it right there. And so we should be quick to acknowledge, hey, like I can't be thinking of myself first. I need to be quick to think of him first and foremost in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that mindset change, I also want to make the point that there is a joy in humility and having that, again, just that mindset change of like wanting to glorify the Lord instead of trying to build your own kingdom. Because in building your own kingdom, like it's just tiring after a time. But there's joy in pursuing humility and in giving glory to the Lord. And there's a book by John Piper. Savannah always tells me I have a book for everything, and it's true. But there's
it should be the Bible.
listen. But there's
No,
a book
listen. It should be the Bible.
by John Piper, and it's called "Don't Waste Your Life." And basically, his whole theme of the book is we are most satisfied when God is most glorified in us. And his whole point is basically saying, like, when we humble ourselves to do everything for God's glory, like, that's when we're most satisfied in him, because we were created to give God glory. So when we're doing the thing we were created to do and we are being humble in that, like, then we're satisfied in the Lord and we're joyful in the Lord. But that only comes from having a humble spirit and a humble mind before the Lord and giving him glory for all things. So there is a joy in humility. And because sometimes I think we can talk about humility and we sit there and we're like, and we can see other people that aren't Christians being prideful, and we can look at them and think that they have it all put together or what they're pursuing is better. But it's a tiring thing to pursue pride. But when you are pursuing humility, like, there is humility in the Lord, I will say. There is joy in that. And it's not a taxing thing, because that's what we were created to do, and that's what we were created for. So.
Yeah. So I think with this, like, I truly believe turning back to scripture for this is the only way that we can overcome pride. And I hate to tell you this, but you're never going to overcome pride in this lifetime. Like, that's just how it is. Like, our flesh will always be with us at this point in our lives until we move on into eternity. Pride is something we are going to have to face for the rest of our lives. And I say that to say that there's grace for a reason. It's something that I'm really struggling with and, like, wrestling with even to this point in my life, is that pride is a thing that's going to follow you, and something we have to give up to the Lord and die to every single day. But there is grace, like I said, there's grace that abounds for all things. And I truly believe that humility comes from the greatest commandment that Jesus says in Matthew 22, 35 through 38. It says this, and when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked a question to test him. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like this. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. So with those two things, like, the person who embodies perfect humility says these two things and follows these two things. So we should follow these two things, right? Like, we should make an attempt to do these commandments and do these commandments well. But so, like, just to kind of finish it off, what does healthy humility look like for you guys?
I think for me, in my journey, it's been acknowledging what I'm good at and being okay with that, and acknowledging the desires the Lord has put on my heart. There's a lot of desires for excellence that the Lord has put on everyone's heart, and whenever we say those to people, it can come across very cocky or prideful. But, like, it's in the how we say it, and it's in the idea of, like, well, we can easily use these desires for our gain or for the Lord's gain. And so that's where it comes to the point. And so acknowledging, yes, Lord, you've put this desire in my life, and it's for your gain. And whenever it becomes for my gain, that's whenever it becomes prideful. And so, like, I've been walking that line and, like, truly, like, understanding what the Lord has called me to do in my life and whatever that looks like for you, and having enough humility to say, yes, Lord, you are the one who's put the desires. You are the one who will make them come to fruition if you decide to. And ultimately, it's for his gain. And so, like, this whole journey of our faith is meant for us to be holding hands with God. And if at any point we let go of his hand and say, okay, we can take care of this, that's whenever we become prideful or we become self-deprecating. We're like, I suck, Lord. Or we're just like, I'm so great. And so, like, really focusing on, like, being in community with him and just analyzing things for me personally. Like, okay, these are things I'm good at. These are things I'm bad at. Here's what the Lord wants me to improve. Here's how I can improve. And just being a realist, honestly, at the end of the day, of like who I am. That way, whenever my pride kicks in, I can easily be like, well, okay, that was pretty prideful of you. And we can, repent and look at that as a new data point, if that makes any sense.
I think it's just really acknowledging even the most subtle like pride in my life. That's important. Whether it's, me just having this attitude of, oh, I'm right at home, like, hey, you need to listen to me. You need to acknowledge me. Like, it doesn't matter. Those kind of things like, okay, that may not be the best way to go about it. And understanding I don't have it all figured out is a big deal, to where it is a constant reliance upon the Lord. And that's why, you see so many times in Scripture, like, how important it is, hey, pray without ceasing, hey, deny yourself daily, hey, do these things. The reason for that is it's so easy for us to get off track. It's so easy for us to lose sight, to get distracted. And so we have to be on guard constantly, because once we become complacent or we kind of feel like we figured it out, we've arrived, we're opening ourselves up to fall into just a life of, really of pride, where it's like, hey, I've got this. I've got it figured out. I've got it under control. I'm good. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. It's okay if I don't have my quiet time today, or I don't have to memorize a verse this week. Like, we just kind of fall into this like opposite of, we don't want to be legalistic, but then we also feel like everything's legalistic, so then we just don't do anything. And so I just encourage that we be very intentional to be quick to even confess the most subtle disobedience, or even if it's a thought, a prideful thought. Hey, let's confess that. But also find accountability in it. As I mentioned, like, God's gifted you in these ways. Find somebody that can share with you those gifts. I was thankful and blessed with some guys in college that would call me out, not just for dumb things I did, but preventing dumb things I may do, right? Like, I had my roommate. He was like, Kyle, if you don't use your ability to build relationships with people for the glory of the Lord, I will punch you. Like, I'll smack you so hard, so often. And so it's just one of those, like, that's right. Tyson just made a fist at Riley saying, I'll do the same thing, bro. But it's one of those things. It's like, okay, it's not prideful to acknowledge that. And we've talked about it. And so he's saying, hey, I want to help you in this, but God's gifted you in building relationships with people. Don't waste it. Right? And there's a lot of people maybe listening that's you. And you, to this point, have been wasting it because you've been wrestling with this confidence issue. Hey, stop. Like, God has given you this gift to use for His glory, to build up His kingdom. He wants to use you. So be faithful. Trust in Him. Allow Him to do that. And don't question it. Don't waver back and forth on, oh, no, they don't want to talk to me. They don't hang out with me. Stop it. Like, God's built you this way for a reason. Now figure out how you can use that for His glory. So that's why I would really encourage. Find accountability 100% in these things to help you acknowledge your gifts, so you can use them for His glory, but then also be quick to confess even the most subtle things that you feel like, oh, man, was that disobedient? If you're questioning, was it disobedient? Like, or was that sinful? Just confess it. All right? It's not going to be like, oh, no, I don't have to confess that. Like, no, be quick to confess. And I think you'll start to see that, as Krista mentioned, like, this freedom that comes from living in this life, like, where God has kind of created us, this creative order of things, towards like, hey, I'm acknowledging Him, I'm satisfied in pursuing Him and glorifying Him and serving Him, and it's a great place to be.
I also think something that, and I know we've talked about a lot about giving the Lord glory and things, but just stepping back and asking yourself before you do anything, or your thoughts or whatever, just saying like, hey, is this giving glory to the Lord, or is this giving glory to myself? And where a lot of this stems, and also going back to my point about how there's joy in humility, during my time at TCC, I was a religious studies major, so I talked to a lot of different people of a lot of different religions. And every time when we would start talking about just the topic of eternity and what they believed would happen, they seemed just so tired because they were pursuing their own glory in different ways, whether that was them gaining certain things, making a name for themselves in heaven. I remember talking to someone one time, and they told us that they believed that God wanted to give them glory when they went to heaven. And I was talking to them, and I was like, so you don't think all glory goes to the Lord? And he was like, no, he shares that glory with us. And I could just tell that he was just tired because that's just what he was pursuing, was his own glory. And so, but again, I just say all of that because there is joy, and like Kyle said, there's freedom in just pursuing the Lord's glory in absolutely everything that you say and everything that you do. And the Bible over and over again talks about, in everything you do it for the glory of the Lord. And so just making that your main pursuit and making that the theme and the purpose of your life is just to give God glory in everything, is just so satisfying and so joyful and so freeing. But it all comes from your pursuit of humility and putting yourself under the Lord and not in the Lord's place or above the Lord's place.
Yeah, and I think, somebody told me this one time, and I can't remember who told me this, but I just remember it so well because it hit so hard during the time. And he told me that false humility spoils the thanksgiving that you can give to the Lord. And that's just stuck with me for a really long time. And I'm still working on false humility and self-deprecating whenever somebody does give a compliment or anything like that, because that's not real humility. And I'm learning that real humility is acknowledging the things that you're good at and acknowledging those things to give to the Lord and give thanks to the Lord whenever somebody brings those things up. So with healthy humility, it's important to have. And I encourage you guys to ask more questions about it. Ask a leader, ask a mentor. If you're struggling with this, don't sit in it alone. Don't do this alone, because it's a hard fight, and the enemy wants you to be isolated. So if you are struggling with this, just find somebody, talk to them about it. Do you guys have anything else to add?
Nope.
Okay. Okay. All right. Sweet. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Be sure to tune in next week, where we'll be having another awesome discussion. And if you want more information or want to ask us a question, make sure to follow us on Instagram at UCOBCM.